Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at all the intricate details that went into creating a game that essentially brought the game industry into the limelight and broke the stereotypical thought that gaming was just for the very reserved and nerd-like individuals. In this video we'll be taking a look at every aspect of Halo 3's development, such as the voice actors behind the characters we have come to know and love, as well as the overall sound design of the game, ranging from the game's soundtrack to the sound of the mongoose and how it was actually captured. On top of that, we will take a quick look into how the game was tested to ensure that the game is fun, playable, and the things that they uncovered during those playtests that needed to be fixed before it was released. Lastly, we'll discuss how the game was received and the entertainment records that the game broke. So without further ado, let's jump headfirst into the making of Bungie's Halo 3. Work on the title began a little before the release of Halo 2 in 2004. Most of the team was actually preoccupied with the final push to get Halo 2 out the door, as well as supporting the game after its launch. Regardless of the fact, Bungie said very little into what they were planning to do next, but they would constantly tease everyone's imagination during their weekly updates alluding to a new project. The team was building a game with an in-house graphics engine which allowed them to implement the use of such things like high dynamic range, global lighting, depth of field effects within cutscenes, and lastly, motion blur. Oddly, Halo 3 doesn't naturally render in true HD, which is just so wild to think, but in reality, flat screen TVs were seen more as a luxury compared to how common they are today. The game naturally renders at 6040p resolution instead of the typical 720, which became the common resolution for all titles that were released during the 360 era. But the image was scalable, which allowed the 360 to upscale the image to a 1080p resolution, and many developers that worked on Halo 3 expressed how frustrating it was to actually develop a game in HD, just because there's a lot more detail that went into the models that they were creating. And while designing the game, they realized that they had great power, and with that great power there's a lot of responsibility to make sure that they used all the assets that they had access to make the game look very impressive, but to keep that sandbox feel to their levels. With the new technology, they really wanted to focus on the design of the Chief's next adversary, the Brutes. The Brutes were previously introduced late in the Halo 2's campaign, but they were more than less designed to mirror the iconic character Chewbacca. And during development, they really wanted to create these characters from the ground up. And so when assembling the essence of what it meant to be a Brute, they chose to create a very pragmatic being known for tactfulness and survivability through scavenging. The developers also programmed them to be very lethal hunters that hunt in groups, which is evident in how they approach combat. At times they will set up coordinated attacks to flush out the player-controlled character by having the majority of the surrounding brutes hurl their grenades in the player's proximity, but they do this all at the same time as one another, which can cause some very sticky situations for the player's character. While designing how the Brutes would look, the developers believed that the Brutes actually built things out of scrap metal, and that's why they have more of a chop shop appearance to them. And another example of this art direction is in the Prowler's design, which actually takes inspiration from an anglerfish, which has appeared in the popular movie Finding Nemo, and more importantly is known as one of nature's most ruthless ocean-dwelling predators. In the Prowler's design, you'll see the vehicle come to life with an opening in the front that resembles a mouth filled with teeth, and then on the side of the vehicle you'll see that it actually has gills, and then on the back of it, of course, you have that fin. And another fun fact about the vehicles in Halo comes from the newest addition, the mongoose. The sound the mongoose makes while you're driving it is actually the combination of one of the developers' two-stroke Vespa, which actually has an aftermarket muffler on it, and the other side of the equation was captured from the developer's Pontiac Fiero. Speaking of other random sounds, the reload animation for the spike gun was created by rubbing together a combat axe against a clamp. Certainly that doesn't sound like a match made in heaven, but they made the combination work. And of course, you cannot talk about Halo's sound design without talking about the masterly crafted score for the game. Some pieces of the game's music were produced with a much larger orchestra than any piece in the prior 2 games. For example, the music for the announcement trailer was recorded with a 60-piece orchestra and a 24-piece choir, and was composed by Martin O'Donnell. Martin has composed all of the scores from the original Halo game all the way up to Halo Reach. He has won multiple awards for his work, and most notably for his work on Halo 2, of which was the best-selling video game soundtrack of all time in the United States. During development, the most difficult sounds to create were the voices of the characters. The reason being is that the game was actually translated into 10 different languages, those being French, Italian, 2 forms of Spanish, one tailored towards Europeans, another towards Latin Americans, also Brazilian, Portuguese, Japanese, Chinese, and Korean. This was no easy task, especially with nearly 40,000 lines of NPC dialogue. This is actually far more than either of the preceding Halo titles. For comparison's sake, Halo 2 had about 15,000 pieces of dialogue. With all the lines of dialogue, the team needed an all-star cast to truly set the tone and to deliver a very powerful message. And firstly, the individual who actually has voiced the Master Chief from Halo's conception all the way to the present-day lineage of the series is no other than Stephen Downes. Stephen, other than being known for his work with Bungie and 343 Studios, used to be a radio personality on a few networks until March 9th, 2015, when he decided to call it a career after 44 years in the radio industry. If there is one sidekick that the Chief had for the majority of each of the games in the series, it would be Cortana. Cortana is voiced by one of the industry's most experienced voice actors, that being Jen Taylor. Jen has also been doing voice acting in video games as far back as Backyard Baseball, which was released in 1997, and she has also played the role as Zoe in Left 4 Dead 1 and 2, and has also done voice work for other well-known titles on top of that. Throughout Halo 3's campaign, Master Chief is also accompanied by the Arbiter, of which is voiced by actually an Emmy Award-winning actor named Keith David Williams. Keith is best known for his co-starring role as King in Platoon and as Childs in the movie The Thing. Another award-winning actor who decided to bring his Golden Globe presence to the virtual world of entertainment is Terrence Stamp. Terrence gave us an absolute treat with his work he did as the Prophet of Truth, and Terrence is actually best known for a lot of different roles he has taken on the silver screen, with one of his roles being the Supreme Chancellor Valerum in Star Wars Episode 1. Other lesser-known voice actors that still delivered phenomenal performances are Justice Bolding as the voice of Miranda Keyes and David Scully as the voice of Sergeant Johnson. With all these voice actors, Bungie really set the bar high when it came to talent, and to accompany the talent, they really needed to create a beautiful world that played as well as it looked. The gameplay didn't stray too far from the original pacing of the previous 2 titles, where they designed combat pieces that aren't too long nor too short. And all of the missions do follow a very similar structure, which is structured into 3 different phases. The first phase has the player repel the Covenant, then the second phase is to expand the Allies' territory, and then thirdly, what the developers equate to cutting the head off of the mission with either some sort of set piece or epic boss battle. In a few Bungie's documentaries leading up to the release of Halo 3, they also coined the ideology of how a player would take on the world with what is called the Golden Triangle method. The method is a combination of the player's ability to fire, melee, and throw grenades. And to aid Bungie in their return to form, they chose to bring back the iconic assault rifle from Halo 1, which was originally scrapped during Halo 2's development. But also on top of that, early on during Halo 3's development, the team decided that they wanted to start the campaign in a jungle-like setting. But this actually caused a lot of problems early on during playtesting, because they realized that a lot of players were actually getting lost and a lot of time ended up backtracking through the level, which was obviously very frustrating for the player as well as the level designers. But this was eventually resolved by making some parts of the map unreachable once you cross this specific section. So to properly test the design of each level Bungie created for the campaign, they actually developed a state-of-the-art playtesting facility where they were able to monitor and analyze everything the test subject was seeing, doing, and what buttons they were pressing, as well as their facial expressions while they were playing the game. Their facility was so advanced they had the ability to view any play session to see why or what happened to an individual player compared to just looking at raw statistics. This technology was very beneficial because it allowed them to truly see what the player was experiencing, which was very crucial, especially when a lot of players were having a very similar experience. And a perfect example of this that puzzled developers was the campaign mission to Storm, where there were some players that just ended up aimlessly wandering around a part of the map that was specifically designed for molecular combat. And after pulling some footage from the play sessions, they found out what was happening was all the AI soldiers were actually taking all the vehicles before the player realized what was being asked of them. So the team just simply decided to add more vehicles to fix this common issue. Then in the end, the team captured more than 3,000 hours worth of data and analyzed over 600 individual play sessions before the game was given a green light and was set to release. The first day sales of Halo 3 reached $170 million in the US, setting a record for the highest gross of any entertainment product within the first 24 hours of its release. This performance beat the previous record set by Halo 2, which earned $125 million within that same time period. The game also helped double the sales of the Xbox 360 when compared to the weekly average before its release. Also on top of that, the game drew in over 1 million Xbox Live members to play online within the first 20 hours, making it the biggest day in the history of Xbox Live. The game received mostly positive reviews, but critics mostly criticized the game for how short the campaign was and how underdeveloped some of the AI character models looked. But overall, the game received overwhelming praise by many and also won a few of the Game of the Year awards from news and media publishers, which is evident in its Metacritic ratings currently sitting at 94. So with that concludes the making of Halo 3. If you guys really enjoyed this video, I'd greatly appreciate it if you could drop a like on the video, as well as if you want to see more content like this in the future, please subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be focusing on making more of the best making of videos for video games moving forward here. So anyways, I just want to thank you one last time for your time, and I just hope you have a great rest of your week.